Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a major political crisis brewing right now in Germany.
Hmm.
And this fight isn't over, renewable energy targets or the federal budget. It is fundamentally about boots on the ground,
Yeah,
about whether the German state can credibly defend itself.
that's right. And this deep dive is essential because it really strips away some of the political noise.
Yeah, it's to the core.
Exactly, to the core of Germany's defense challenge.
Mhm.
Plugging these severe manpower gaps in the Bundeswehr, their military.
Right.
They are trying, well, pretty desperately to fill massive NATO obligations.
And this is all against the backdrop of the very real and looming threat from Russian aggression.
Absolutely.
So the specific fight we're tracking here is this furious legislative row. It's between the ruling coalition partners and the conservative opposition.
Yes.
And it's over how exactly to bring back conscription, or maybe, some version of it.
Right. The sources we have, they lay out this intense political breakdown.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to move beyond just the headline, Germany is fighting.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand the history, the specific political plans, and why finding enough soldiers is proving so explosive that it shattered a draft bill just this week.
And we really have to start with the scope of the problem. I think that justifies the chaos we're seeing.
Okay.
Germany is currently sitting at around 180,000 active troops.
Which sounds like a lot, but
But in response to recent NATO assessments, especially regarding European conventional defense, they've pledged a massive undertaking.
okay, what are we talking?
They aim to gradually boost troop levels up to 260,000 soldiers, plus another 200,000 reservists ready for, immediate deployment.
Wow, that is a staggering number. That's basically asking the military to almost double its deployable force.
Pretty much.
How is that goal even established? And what are the practical consequences of a gap that big today?
Well, that number, the 260K plus reserves, it reflects what's needed for Germany to credibly anchor the defense of Central and Eastern Europe.
Moving from peacetime to war ready.
Exactly. From a peacetime army structure to a war-ready one. And the practical effect of the gap now, training, readiness, they're severely impacted.
And the troops they do have.
Overstretched. Definitely overstretched. But to understand why the gap is so huge, we have to look back to 2011.
Right, 2011. What happened then?
That's when conscription was suspended under Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Okay.
It was seen as a logical move then, post-Cold War, disarmament, downsizing.
Made sense at the time.
It seemed to. Up until that suspension, men turning 18 had a mandatory obligation, either military service or something called Zivildienst.
Civic service, right, for about 9 months.
That's it, civic service.
So it wasn't just a military thing. It was deeply ingrained in Germany's civic infrastructure.
Absolutely. That's a crucial piece of color often missed in these crisis talks.
How so?
Well, when mandatory service stopped, it didn't just hurt the Bundeswehr's recruitment pipeline. It hit critical social sectors hard.
Like hospitals.
Fair enough.
Homes. Yeah.
Exactly. Hospitals, elderly care homes, various charities, they depended on those young men doing Zivildienst. It was low-cost labor.
So pulling that rug out.
Created a sudden vacuum. It destabilized a lot of non-military services pretty quickly.
Huh. That adds a whole other dimension, doesn't it? Why bringing back any kind of service is so difficult. It's not just military, it's cultural, social.
Precisely. And here's that crucial legal note we mentioned.
Okay.
While the services were suspended, the clause allowing the state to draft men, it remains part of the basic law, their constitution.
So legally they can reactivate it.
Legally, yes. Politically, doing it without consensus is, well, as we're seeing now, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, clearly. And that's where history connects to the present alarm bells, right? Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, experts have been sounding seriously alarmed about the state of the German military.
They have. Critics consistently point to dwindling recruitment numbers and severe equipment shortages.
Even with that huge Zeitenwende fund, Chancellor Scholz pledged for modernization.
Even with that, the money helps, but it doesn't fix everything overnight. And that combination, low numbers, poor equipment, creates what military analysts call the vicious circle.
Explain that, the vicious circle.
Okay, so you mentioned equipment shortages.
Yeah.
And we're talking everything from not enough body armor to maintenance issues grounding entire air wings.
Stuff soldiers see every day.
Exactly. When you combine low numbers with poor visible equipment problems, military service just becomes fundamentally unattractive to young people.
Makes sense.
So fewer recruits sign up. That increases the burden on the troops already serving.
Yeah.
Which makes the service even less appealing.
Which means even fewer recruits.
Yeah.
And round it goes.
You got it, a downward spiral.
It sounds like just throwing money at new tanks isn't enough. You have to fix the morale, the manpower crisis itself.
Oh, it's the challenge.
And yet, there's enormous political pressure to solve this. Friedrich Merz, he leads the conservative CDU-CSU opposition bloc.
Yes.
He pledged, basically when he took office as party leader, to push for Europe's strongest conventional army.
A huge promise. And that urgency, that political pressure, led directly to this battle we're seeing now. Voluntary versus mandatory service.
That's the nub of it.
That is the turning point for this whole crisis.
Yeah.
If the goal is 260,000 troops, the real fight isn't about the number itself, it's about the tool they use to get there.
Okay, so let's get into that furious row. We have two very different visions.
Very different.
First, there's the Defence Minister Boris Pistorius. He's from the ruling Social Democrats, the SPD. His plan favored voluntary recruitment. The idea was, attract tens of thousands of young men with better incentives, more professionalization.
And that approach was initially agreed upon. Over the summer, the coalition seemed to be on board with that. But the conservative opposition, the CDU-CSU bloc, led by Merz, they are deeply skeptical.
They don't think voluntary will cut it.
They don't. They argue voluntary schemes have been tried before and, frankly, failed to meet the numbers.
So what do they want?
They are demanding a compulsory mechanism, a firm form of conscription, written into the law, ready to kick in automatically if needed.
Ah.
Merz summed it up pretty well. He said, quote, "I am skeptical of the voluntary approach. If we succeed, so much the better." Kind of a challenge, really.
Wait a minute, though. If the military's own inspector general, we'll get to him later, says he's confident in the voluntary plan, why are the conservatives willing to just, blow up the whole legislative process over this? Is it genuine national security fear, or is it political posturing? Playing politics with the ruling coalition?
It's likely both, I think.
Right.
But the fear is real. They genuinely seem to believe the state cannot rely solely on the willingness of 18-year-olds when the threat feels existential.
Okay.
And this whole dispute just came to a head this week, dramatically.
Right. The proposed compromise, the Conscription Light draft bill.
That was it.
We need to define that. Conscription Light, what did that actually involve? Why LEAT?
Okay, so Conscription Light was basically an attempt to avoid a full-scale mandatory draft.
Yeah.
Which everyone knows is politically toxic.
Less controversial, maybe?
That was the idea.
Yeah.
It was Light because it started voluntary. But crucially, it had a built-in mechanism for mandatory service only if specific, measurable targets weren't met.
A backup plan.
A backup plan. And the specific compromise that Pistorius, the defense minister, ultimately vetoed was the idea that a certain contingent of young men, selected by lottery, could have been pressed into mandatory service if the volunteer program failed to produce enough recruits.
If it didn't hit the readiness goals.
Yes, if it failed to meet those defined goals.
So a hybrid system, voluntary first, mandatory backup.
Yeah.
But Pistorius vetoed it, and the fallout was immediate.
Immediate. A news conference scheduled for late Tuesday meant to announce this new draft bill, hastily canceled. Just pulled.
And then the mudslinging started.
Oh, yes. It escalated fast. High-level political attacks. Christian Democrat Norbert Röttgen went public, attacking Pistorius personally.
What did he say?
He used incredibly sharp language. Said he had, quote, "never seen a federal minister directly torpedo an important legislative process in his own area of responsibility and plunge his own parliamentary group into chaos."
Ouch. That's strong.
Very strong. Pistorius fired back right away in the Tagesspiegel newspaper. He insisted, "I don't torpedo things, and I'm not destructive either."
The intensity of those quotes. It tells you everything about the level of distrust, doesn't it?
It really does. And it confirms the disagreement isn't just philosophical. It's rooted in the practical mechanics of the law.
Which brings us to the actual deal breakers. What did they manage to agree on, and what was the one point that just shattered the whole thing?
Well, they have agreed on phase one, and this applies to young people basically immediately.
Okay, what's phase one?
All 18-year-old men will have to fill out a mandatory questionnaire.
About what?
About their physical fitness and their interest in military service. Basically, the government gathering data and contact info.
Okay, so the mandatory questionnaire, that's the easy part they could agree on.
Seems so. The core sticking point, the reason Pistorius vetoed the whole thing, was the language. Specifically, the vague language used to define the trigger mechanism for mandatory service.
The trigger for that lottery system.
Exactly. The draft law said call-ups could only be ordered if the defense policy situation makes a rapid expansion of troop levels imperative.
That sounds subjective.
That's precisely the problem.
Sure.
It sounds technical, bureaucratic maybe, but really it was a crisis of trust.
How so?
The conservatives found that language far too subjective, too vague.
It left too much wiggle room.
Exactly. They felt it left too much power to political interpretation, especially in a crisis. It could allow the ruling coalition of the day to just indefinitely delay mandatory service, even if NATO requirements weren't being met.
So they wanted something automatic.
They demanded a compulsory option written into the law from the very start. No ambiguity, no political hurdle later on.
And the whole legislative effort collapsed over those few words, defining the trigger.
Over those few ambiguous words? Quite incredible, really.
Before we connect this back to public opinion and the military view, we have to touch on the gender nuance.
Right.
What about women? Because right now, this debate is focused solely on young men.
Yes, for now it is. Including women in any kind of conscription program, well, it's not currently on the table.
Why not?
Because it would require a constitutional amendment. And that needs a much, much higher level of political consensus.
Something that just doesn't exist right now?
Not even close.
Yeah.
So that constitutional hurdle effectively protects women from being included in this mandatory discussion, at least for the time being.
Okay, that's an important point. Now, connecting all this back to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it's not just the politicians sounding the alarm, is it?
No, not at all. The military leadership itself has weighed in. The Inspector General of the Armed Forces, Carsten Breuer,
Top soldier.
the top soldier,
Yes.
he stressed the urgency. He said, we need rapid growth potential to enable us to defend ourselves and also to deter attacks. Real urgency, in his words.
But here's what's fascinating to me. Despite Breuer's urgent assessment about needing growth potential,
Yes.
he reportedly remains confident in the original voluntary draft law, the one Pistorius favored.
That's right. Reports suggest he thinks the numbers can be met if the volunteer approach is properly funded and executed.
Which makes the political row even more pointed, doesn't it?
Absolutely acute. If the professional military leadership believes the voluntary route can work, potentially, but the conservative opposition bloc refuses to accept any law without a fixed mandatory fallback.
Then it stops being about military necessity.
Well, the legislative solution becomes purely a function of political leverage and, frankly, mistrust, not just military need.
Which brings us finally to the public. What do people actually think? How does the German public feel about potentially bringing back compulsory service after, 13 years?
Well, there was a recent poll on this, and it showed a majority of Germans, 54%, actually support a return to conscription.
No, interesting. A majority support it.
A majority, yes. But you have to look closer at the demographics. The devil is always in the details, isn't it?
Always. So what do the details show?
The support is strongest among older Germans, often over 65% support among those over 60.
Ah, a generational divide.
Clear generational divide.
Yeah.
Older Germans often went through the system themselves, right? And they might support it for reasons of civic duty, discipline.
Well, younger people.
Young people who would actually be subject to the draft today may feel very differently. They might see it more as an infringement on personal liberty.
Right. So to sort of wrap up this incredibly complicated deep dive, we've seen this political drive to rapidly build up the Bundeswehr, meet those big NATO obligations, and it's running headlong into history, into precedent, and into these deep, almost existential political divisions.
Absolutely. The entire legislative framework just collapsed this week. And it collapsed specifically over whether voluntary recruitment is a serious, achievable solution.
Or just wishful thinking.
Or just wishful thinking that potentially leaves Germany dangerously exposed.
The inability to agree on that trigger mechanism, it really proves the magnitude of the challenge, doesn't it?
It really does. They're under massive pressure from NATO, from the security situation. Yet they cannot even agree on the fundamental language to define their own recruitment strategy.
Leading to chaos.
Delay. Chaos and delay,
Exactly. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on.
Okay.
If the political system cannot even agree on the mechanism for recruitment, voluntary or compulsory, and if that argument can completely shatter a major defense bill like this, how quickly can Germany possibly achieve its huge goal of creating Europe's strongest conventional army?
It's a big question.
The outcome of this bureaucratic and political fight, It feels like it will determine whether Germany can credibly meet these new urgent security requirements from NATO.
Or whether this current crisis just continues to undermine Europe's collective defense readiness.
A lot riding on it.
A huge amount.